What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the College Underdogs Podcast. I'm your host, Trey Smith, and I'm going to start this show off giving you the news I was talking about last week. The College Underdogs Podcast is officially joining the BLEAV network, BLEAV.com. You can go read about the BLEAV network on their website. One of the fastest growing platforms in this space. I think it's over 500 podcasts, a platform of 40 million, cover everything from NFL, NBA, NHL, NCAA football, basketball. I mean, all of it. And if you look at their layout, most of their shows have a former player from that team hosting. Just an incredible network. And here we are, the College Underdogs, joining that team. Now, a couple practical things about this. The good news is, I still own the show, so I'm not forfeiting anything creatively or ownership wise. It is a partnership. That is the contract. I mean, we have the contract is a partnership agreement. There's still some things I've got to get acclimated to. I'm sure some point this week it'll be official. But from your vantage point, if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on one of the streaming platforms, not really anything changes from my understanding. Everything that's happening is on the back end of all this as far as redirecting some things. But as far as where it broadcasts to, the YouTube channel, nothing's changing here. If you're listening on the streaming platforms, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, you name it, I think there's some things will change to indicate that this show is a part of the BLEAV network. But as far as just your daily listening, from what I understand, it's all going to be in the same place. Question I got last week was, is it still going to be, American Conference centric, or is it going to be covering everything? And I guess the best way I can answer that is it's going to kind of be the same thing it's been, right? Where the American Conference has been the primary focus of the show, but as I got credentialed by the Mountain West Conference, and as they become national story, make national headlines, we're going to talk about that. We're going to cover the landscape of Group of Five mid-major conferences. However, I do think the staple, the foundation of the show will continue to be the American Conference. Like I said, I'm where the home base for the American Conference is. I live 20 minutes away. So there's some convenience there. And anyways, I don't like I said, creatively, if there's anything that does change or we expand into other areas for the show, it'll just be my own doing. There's not this is a situation where now, oh no, I'm getting told, this is what you got to talk about. This is what you got to do. No, it's a really great setup. And if you follow me on Twitter, you probably already know that because I announced everything on Friday on my social medias, but I just didn't get around to YouTube. And then when the bomb dropped on Saturday morning, College Game Day from Pete Thamel, I wanted to make a short about that, which I am going to talk about on this show a little bit more. But anyways, that is the update. We are officially, the College Underdogs Podcast is in the BLEAV network. It's a tremendous opportunity for this show to get even more exposure. If you're not familiar with BLEAV, man, they've got partnerships with Sports Illustrated. They're part of the Cumulus Media network. Bally Sports, they have shows on Bally Sports. They have 2 channels on Fubo TV. Those of you that use that as your streaming provider, I've had it before. I kind of fluctuate throughout the year between Fubo and YouTube TV, so I've seen the BLEAV channels. I think they got 2. One is just BLEAV Sports, and one is specific for football. Where will this show fall in all of that? I don't know yet. That's the parts that I'm still kind of getting acclimated to. And a lot of it, I'm sure, is performance driven. So as this show gets into the network and continues to perform, anyways, point being, joining this network, great opportunity. Thank you, who's watching, who listens. If not for you, this probably wouldn't be happening. Within the first 70 episodes of the College Underdogs podcast, we had over 130,000 streams across all platforms, which is just absolutely amazing. And then those of you who've been along on this journey with me, prior to this particular show, but just since I've been on YouTube and, had the Blue Bloods podcast, we had a couple others that we had on here, man, thanks for hanging in there and continuing to support. And I'm very much appreciative of that. So moving on to today's show, let's talk about this Pete Thamel report from Saturday, right? So he mentioned that obviously the Pac-2 and the Mountain West are talking about a scheduling alliance, but what he did say is that there is a plan B on the table between the Pac-2 and the MAC and the Conference USA, right? I put the short up over the weekend that a lot of you saw and commented on. I'm going to respond to particularly one of the comments that caught my attention, but before I do, let's back up for a second. Where do things stand with the Pac-2 as of right now today? Well, the latest I'm aware of, we talked about the court case, the court decision. Oregon State, Washington State won the court case last week. The next day, I think it was, Washington's attorney in the university on behalf of the departing 10 filed an appeal. So this is going to the Supreme Court. And at this point, my personal opinion on it is that there's going to be some sort of settlement between the Pac-2 and the departing 10. Maybe not. I could be wrong, but I think there's probably going to be some sort of settlement. We shall see. But as far as where things are now, Oregon State, Washington State won the case. The departing 10 have filed an appeal. So this scheduling alliance situation. So a question that came up on the short, and it was kind of, I think someone was trying to shade the American Conference and all this. And they said, what does that tell you about the American Conference? Well, in my opinion, what that tells me about the AAC in this particular situation is that they're playing it very wisely, just like the Mountain West is. See, the reason why this Plan B report, I'm guessing, has surfaced is because if you recall last week in Dellinger's report, that really made it sound like things were inching closer to this alliance between the Mountain West and the Pac-2. Well, in there, what the Mountain West is attempting to do is not just have a scheduling alliance short term, but evolve it into a full merger long term. And in that report Dellinger put out last week, he was saying that there would be a financial penalty should the two remaining PAC schools look to add Mountain West teams, that doesn't include the entire conference. In other words, if you're going to poach, there's going to be a penalty for that. So then all of a sudden, the next day, this report comes out, there's this Plan B with the Conference USA and the MAC. And then on the same day, actually, I talked about on here as well, on a 24/7 Sports Oregon State site, it was saying, this is not about to happen. This is false. Like, yes, it's on the table, but it's not a done deal or even the number one priority. And so back to that question, what's that tell you about the American Conference? Well, why would the American Conference, or the Mountain West for that matter, enter into any kind of scheduling alliance with two teams who have made it crystal clear that their number one priority is to rebuild the PAC? See, the Conference USA and the MAC don't have anything to worry about as it pertains to getting poached. Because Oregon State and Washington State, they're not going to look to the Conference USA and the MAC when it comes to rebuilding the conference. So if they end up going with an alliance with those two conferences for the next 2 years or the next year or whatever it is, that's going to make it very clear that their intentions are to poach teams and rebuild from backfilling with likely mostly Mountain West teams. And then who knows, they may try their hand at the American Conference. So why would the AAC or the Mountain West help them for the next 2 years just to get poached afterwards? And that's where I think the Mountain West is playing it smart. If that report is 100% accurate, saying, look, we'll do this short term, but long term, we want a full merger. And if you try to add teams, select teams from our conference, there's going to be a significant penalty. And then, of course, also way back, which we talked about, I think it was August, the American pulled themselves out of the whole westward expansion. And just to remind you on how all that played out, when it was the PAC-4 remaining and they had no other options, there was some mutual interest with the American Conference. And I told you on this show it would either likely be all four or none at all. And this was after that the ACC had voted no to even voting on adding Cal and Stanford, and I think SMU as well in that particular situation. Or maybe SMU came in later. But point being is there was some interest, but ultimately Stanford and Cal, that was when the politicians started lobbying the ACC, and then next thing you know, you had all the revenue stuff came out, the foregoing revenue, whatever. And anyways, SMU, Cal, and Stanford got into the ACC. Good for you. And it was after that, not long, that the AAC pulled out of expanding westward altogether. Even Oresco said after the fact, talking about the Power 5 label, he said, well, Stanford, Cal, those teams acted like they didn't have a landing spot. And he said they had a landing spot. They were just so desperate to have a Power 5 affiliation that it didn't work out. And I think if you read between the lines there, obviously what he's saying is we had an opportunity here, but they wanted that Power 5 designation. They were willing to pay the price for it. And anyways, so again, my opinion on it is I think it's wise that both the Mountain West are playing it the way they're playing it, and then that the American is just kind of standing by. I'm still not so sure it makes a lot of sense for an AAC team to jump ship to a rebuilt PAC. I mean, there's still a lot of things that need to be, a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I talked about it last week, from the media deal, all that. I'm not going to rehash it, but go listen to last, I think Wednesday or Thursday's episode. But just something to think about. And I think if this MAC Conference USA thing is real in the Pac-2, it's a pretty good indicator of what the Pac-2 is looking to do. But before they can get into any of that, they're going to have to figure out what's going on with this court case, with this appeal. Are they going to just decide to settle? Are they going to let it go to the Supreme Court? And hopefully, in their case, they're hoping to win there. There's some other elements to this that are kind of beyond my comprehension that I don't want to get into because I'm not fully into it, but I've had some people sending me some things I need to probably dive into a little bit more. But anyways, all right, let's get into some football now. Like we're right here. We're right here at the last stretch. A really big game this weekend. I mean, obviously, SMU got the win over Memphis at Memphis, and they positioned themselves very well, not just in the race for the conference championship, but in the race for the New Year's Six Bowl. Tulane, as expected, is still in the driver's seat. If you look at the AP top 25, which obviously that doesn't really matter in terms of CFP, but just kind of we're using that as somewhat of a litmus test. Toledo is now in the AP top 25. Liberty is in the AP top 25. Of course, JMU is as well, but as we learned last week, that ain't happening. And they just lost, by the way. Yeah, that was the other thing. They lost to App State. So they got denied, the college game day, all of that. They ended up losing. It was a good game. And so it kind of handles that. In fact, were they still in? Yeah, they were at 24 despite their loss. JMU was. So anyways, I saw some predictors on the CFP ranking, the latest one that'll come out, I think, tomorrow evening. And it had Liberty cracking the top 25. This predictor, I think it was actually on the NCAA website, but it had Liberty at 11-0 getting into that CFP rankings. And that could throw a little bit of a wrench into the AAC's plans for 7 in a row in the event Tulane is not the team that wins the conference. I still think, regardless of what any other team does, Liberty, Toledo, whoever, if Tulane wins the next two, they're headed to a New Year's Six game. Bleacher Report this morning or maybe it was yesterday, had the latest prediction for them was Tulane and Texas playing in the Cotton Bowl. So that was a Bleacher Report. But so here's what I'm looking at. Obviously option one for the AAC to get the New Year's Six bid is Tulane to win the next two. Tulane got a very comfortable win, covered, did what they needed to do this last week. I mean, I feel like what we haven't seen from Tulane in conference play, we saw this past weekend. It should be a great game and a great matchup with them and UTSA on Friday on national TV, ABC. Jeff Traylor and this whole Texas A&M link, I personally am not so sure Traylor is at the top of A&M's list. Not saying he shouldn't be. I'm just saying I don't know if he is. I do think he interviewed for that job as it was reported. He's been asked now by the same reporter, I think it's JJ, who covers UTSA, asked him Friday after the game when they beat, who'd they just beat? It'll hit me in a second. Oh, USF, South Florida. South Florida, get the win this week. You're bowl eligible. But UTSA asked him. He deferred to the players. Got asked again today. And point blank, same guy. Did you interview for the A&M job? He said, we play Friday at 2:30. So the fact that he's avoiding it this hard tells me he probably did interview. Does that mean he's going to get it? Does that mean he's at the top of A&M's list? No, I mean, I think if you look at A&M's makeup, they're going to go try and probably get a sitting Power 5 coach. I mean, that's what they think they need to do. That's what they think of themselves. So we'll see. But will that play a role in, how they finish the season? That's to be determined. But I was kind of looking at the possible scenarios, right? So we could have Tulane versus SMU. We could have Tulane versus UTSA in a rematch. This is talking conference championship. Or we could have UTSA SMU. If Liberty wins out and we have Tulane and SMU in the conference championship, I think the winner of Tulane and SMU in the conference championship gets the New Year's Six bid over an undefeated Liberty conference champion or a Toledo MAC conference champion for that matter. I think because at that point, Tulane will be the highest ranked G5. SMU, yes, they have 2 losses, but if they win that game, and of course this is assuming that, the SMU beats Navy, which don't overlook Navy, okay, take care of business, but assuming they're 10-2 versus an 11-1 Tulane, I think they get in. And I think it could boil down to something as simple if the scenario plays out where it is a matchup with Texas. And it is in the Cotton Bowl. Do you think the committee is going to put Liberty versus Texas if they have the option of putting SMU versus Texas? No. Because at the end of the day, revenue is still going to play a role in it. And I think you could also make an argument and make a case that SMU is deserving. Like if you watch Liberty play, you watch SMU play, and then of course, but if Tulane wins, they're in regardless. It doesn't matter if Tulane, well, I guess it would be SMU because, well, I guess what I would need to see is the tiebreaker between SMU and UTSA if they both were to lose this weekend. So if SMU were to get upset by Navy and UTSA loses to Tulane, who gets that tiebreaker is what I would need to see, because usually it defers to head-to-head, then it defers to highest ranked. Then they have like this little formula that they put together to figure out the tiebreaker on that. So because the only scenario I initially was thinking if UTSA and Tulane in a rematch would be if UTSA beat Tulane. I think Tulane and SMU lost. But I'm not so sure on if Tulane beats UTSA and SMU loses. Either way, I don't know that I don't think SMU loses, so I'll make that clear. But so that's the first option. Now, if UTSA and SMU end up playing in the conference championship, meaning SMU wins, UTSA wins, that would likely be a game at SMU. that one I have to think a little bit. Would a 3-loss conference champion UTSA get in over an undefeated Liberty? Not so sure. So if UTSA has these New Year's 6 dreams, I think you're wanting Liberty to lose one here in the last 2 games. And maybe even Toledo to drop one as well. Toledo, I think, almost dropped one to Bowling Green last week. So if you're UTSA at this point, you're kind of wanting to hedge yourself and at least get a loss out of those teams. SMU beating a 3-loss UTSA in the conference championship. Would that be enough to put them in with 2 losses over Liberty? I don't know, but I'm gonna stick to the logic I just used a second ago and say yes, because again, if it's a potential matchup with the Texas or something like that, I think SMU gets the nod. And if the cards fall where it's SMU and Texas in a matchup, like, you can't put that in the Fiesta Bowl. Like, that's I would expect that to be a Cotton Bowl matchup. And then UTSA and Tulane in a rematch. If that's a rematch because Tulane lost, then I don't know that the AAC gets the New Year's 6 bid in that particular scenario. So here we are. Nothing left to do but to do it and play it. Let the games play out and see what happens. Obviously, Friday you've got UTSA and Tulane. Saturday, SMU and Navy. As long as SMU takes care of business at Navy, they're in. And then, it's weird because if you're an SMU fan, like, on one hand, you're cheering for UTSA so that you get the home field for the conference championship. But on the other hand, you're cheering for Tulane because you want that ranked matchup on your resume, or on your New Year's 6 resume. And then if you're Tulane, just win, baby. Win and you are in. UTSA, win, and then cheer that Liberty and Toledo lose just in case. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on that as the New Year's 6 race plays out. I think the Mountain West is out. I don't think they're in it. I think they beat each other up too much, and you could end up seeing a 4 or 5 loss conference champion coming out of the Mountain West this year. So anyways, curious to know your thoughts on, top of the show with the PAC-2 potential scheduling alliance. And then, of course, how you think this New Year's 6 thing is going to play out. That's it today. College Underdogs Podcast. Trey Smith signing off.